a playlist original.
Don't you want to go where the rainbow ends?
Those two girls, who were they?
What in the hell are you talking about?
I don't think you realize what kind of trouble you were in. You've been way out of your depth.
If you only knew.
Eyes Wide Shut. Rated R. Starts Friday, July 16th at a theater near you.
All right. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster, delivering another July anniversary episode to you guys. This time, my pick for the month, we're looking at Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut from 1999. I think we're recording just shy of a week after its actual anniversary date, so which is pretty on time for us. And gosh, lots to unwind in this one. Gaius, I know that you'd mentioned off camera, this is not the first time you'd seen it, but first time in a long while. So it felt kind of like a first time watch for you. That was the case for me. And admittedly, I just got to get it out right off the hop. Like, I'm definitely not even prepared to chat about this movie, honestly, because as you know, with many, if not most of Kubrick movies demand, like you were just mentioning, multiple rewatches. And I feel like I got to soak in this movie like once and got to watch it for the sake of watching it. But that next watch will be one where I'm able to kind of like piece together some of the subtext that was going throughout. It was a daunting watch and there was lots to appreciate. But fortunately, I mean, it was one of those movies where I've been really enjoying the homework I've been doing on it afterwards, almost more than I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, it was really interesting to learn about the making of it. And and then like, you know, the filming of it, which amazed me incredibly, just how long. I mean, when I read the data when it went in production, I was like, whoa, that long ago. And then they were in production for a really long time, like 15 months.
Yes,
it was just ridiculous.
Guinness,
and then also
record breaking at the time.
Yeah, for the most continuous film shoot ever, 400 days.
Oh boy,
crazy. And then the post-production, because there's so many people that either have said that Stanley Kubrick thinks that, actually I think his quote was like one of his kind of like doing the Cliff Notes version, but one of his finest contributions to cinema is what he allegedly said, according to
of his own. Like, this is him talking about himself. Okay.
Yeah, according to some of his family. But then other people said that he thought the movie was shit. And one of those people was I think R. Lee Army, who was in Full Metal Jacket.
Yes.
And then someone kind of corrected what he said. It was like, that's not really what he said. So there's a lot of stuff that happened like after this. And like, you know, some people said that he complained about Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. Other people said he didn't, that they were great to work with. I actually, reading about the making of it, which I had never really done.
Nor had I. Wow.
Was a really kind of like interesting kind of added bonus to watching the movie.
I feel like it added to the experience of watching this movie is finding out the stuff about it afterwards. It's not like one of your typical like wildly contentious productions. Like, yes, it was very long and a lot of, you know, as most Kubrick movies are, you know, quite dense filming schedule, but so much history and ambiguity behind like the after words of this movie that it kind of made this even more interesting in hindsight, especially when you consider sort of the things depicted in this movie than how they might have had implications for Stanley Kubrick afterwards, which I'm sure we're going to get into. I'm sure many Kubrick fans know this was the last movie he made before he had his untimely death, and I think it was in 1999. It was only 4 days after he showed the final cut, or what would end up being the final cut to Warner Brothers of a heart attack, which, you know, apparently he was reported not being any ill health, and that's kind of led to some conspiracies about this movie, which I thought was really interesting to dig down those rabbit holes. That was all fresh to me, but I really wanted to pick your brain about what you thought about all the rumors and stuff about Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, and I know that they didn't divorce or break up until 2001, but I can't imagine this was easy on the marriage at the time of Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise.
No, I don't imagine.
They had done movies together before, like Days of Thunder and Far and Away, and, you know, compared to those two, I'm sure this was a much tougher shoot for both of them. Tom Cruise has more screen time than her. I mean, that was one of the things that I was curious to ask you about too, because while I was watching it, and I knew that because I've seen the movie before, that she's ended a bit less than he is, and but I found her to be a more interesting character overall, and kind of wanted to spend more time with her.
Okay.
Not to say that I didn't think that he wasn't interesting too. I kind of think that she gives the stronger performance of the two. Not that he's bad in it. I
know what you're saying though. Like, but ranking them, especially that scene that kind of catapults the plot forward when they're having that weed induced conversation, and she reveals, I guess, like maybe before we go into too many plot details, I don't know if you wanted to give a summary of the storyline, but I agree. Just basically like that scene in particular where she's kind of laughing, feeling the effects of the weed, and like shatters his ego in that scene was masterfully acted by Nicole Kidman.
Yeah. Well, the kids say she ate. That's what I've been hearing.
Yeah. Oh boy, she let him know in that scene.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Eyes Wide Shut, which is funny because there's been a lot of just people don't want to really call it an erotic mystery psychological drama because it was kind of promoted as an erotic thriller. If you watch trailers for the movie and TV spots, that's kind of what they sold.
I feel like that's accurate.
Some people don't think that's what it is.
Okay.
I thought it was. I mean, it's not really so much a thriller, even though there are some really intense scenes that could fall into that category.
Right.
I'll read up on why some people think it's that and why it isn't.
Okay.
But the movie was directed, produced, and co-written by Stanley Kubrick, and it's based on the 1926 novella Dream Story. It's a German novella, and it transfers the story setting from early 20th century Vienna to 1990s New York City. The plot centers on a physician played by Tom Cruise, who is shocked when his wife, played by Nicole Kidman, reveals that she had contemplated having an affair 12 months earlier. He then embarks on a night-long adventure during which he infiltrates a mass orgy of an unnamed secret society, and that is pretty much doesn't really explain everything, but that's kind of the plot in a nutshell.
Part of the movie. Yeah, for
that's
sure.
Part of the movie.
Yeah.
Like you said, Kubrick died within days after showing the final cut of Eyes Wide Shut to Warner Brothers and Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. He reportedly considered it his greatest contribution to the art of cinema, but some people dispute that.
Wow.
In order to ensure a theatrical R rating in the United States, Warner Brothers digitally altered several sexually explicit scenes during post-production. This version of the movie premiered on July 13th, 1999, before being released on July 16th to generally positive but polarized reviews from critics. It ended up being Stanley Kubrick's highest grossing film ever, $162 million worldwide. Also his first movie to debut at number one with $21 million. Also, it was Tom Cruise's sixth number one debut in a row at that time. He was a movie star du jour back then. And I will say this, even though I said that I think she is the better of the two of them in this, while I was watching it, because he's still a capable actor and he has some great moments in the movie too. This makes me miss him acting because he hasn't really done a movie like this in forever.
Quite some time.
Like I said, he's been a glorified stuntman for years, it seems now. Like he just does action movies. And this period makes me miss that. Like between this and I'm sure like Magnolia will be another movie we explore later in the year. Like
I also haven't
something
seen.
something he was really great in. I don't know. I miss him. I'm not saying he doesn't try, because certainly he risks his life to give us
lends his sensibilities in art and movies in a different way these days than he did when he was more straightforward acting. I gotta say, like I always, as much as you're right, he pretty much exclusively does action movies these days. I do quite like his acting in the Mission Impossible movies and the Top Gun franchise now that it is.
Yeah.
But you're right, it is definitely, I think there's like action career Tom Cruise, and then there's like your straightforward kind of acting role career of Tom Cruise, and this obviously falls in the latter. And I really liked his performances. It was a quite subdued Tom Cruise performance, though, wouldn't you say? Like he has no big, I think he's up there with like not quite on the same level, but Nick Cage is usually guaranteed as one or two moments of cage rage in his movies. You can expect him to have a big freak out scene in any role he's cast in. Tom Cruise, I always think that of as well, but he doesn't really get a moment to really let loose. Very subdued.
There's no
Tom Cruise in this movie.
There's no like help me help you moment in the movie at all.
Exactly.
I guess his biggest moment comes towards like the climax when he gets back home and like the mask is laying down. It's laying down next to her, and then he kind of breaks down and starts crying and says that he'll tell her everything. I think that's his like biggest moment in the movie, and actually probably one of the strongest moments in the movie for him, at least. That and that scene that you're talking about where they're the weed is turned into like true serum for her. When she is detailing what she thought about doing, and his face, you can just see like the disappointment, and like you see his ego breaking in them. There's a lot that he's showing with just a look. in that scene that I thought was actually really strong as well. But yeah, like this was your first time watching it, and I know it was, like you said, it's a lot to take in, and
Yep.
this episode probably won't even represent how you fully feel about it.
You are completely right, and I wanted to be upfront about that in the first place. I haven't even really settled on my complete thoughts on this movie yet. I only watched it yesterday as of recording, and I've watched so many like essays and other people's thoughts about, connecting some of the deeper meanings of this movie that I just, have not had the chance to do myself yet.
Yeah.
I really want to get another watch in like sooner than later so I can maybe start piecing together some stuff. But like any Kubrick movie, at least most, like, he has a lot to say in his movies. I've heard people put it like especially because he adapts a lot of novels. Most of his movies are adapted from novels, and he has a way of adapting the story that he is telling on film and adding his own story separately in it. So you can look at his films in several ways, if not just two. And this is one where I feel like I was, objectively looking at what he's putting on the screen and all the stuff there without really getting to connect all the other perhaps dots that are scattered throughout. And that's what a subsequent viewing is going to, allow me to do. And I haven't had that chance yet. So I'm really kind of stewing on what I think the significance of so many different characters and lines and imagery was. I don't know if you had that experience where you haven't seen it in a long time, or if this was, a good second watch for you, but.
So I'm kind of in the position that you're in. So like the first time I saw it, I actually saw it when it came out on home video. So that would be like 2000. So I did not see this in theaters. A while ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I did not see this in theaters. So this would not be me. I think at the time, I wasn't quite there with movies like this where I'm like, oh, I need to see this. I knew at the time when they were promoting it that it was his final film and all that. Right. But I don't think I kind of got into these type of movies until I got out of high school. So it was probably like around 2002 was when I probably would have been all over this if this had come out then.
Right.
But in 1999, I was pretty young. I was like, this is not something that's going to grab me. But I did end up seeing it when I was that young. And just a year after, a little over under a year after it came out in theaters, and definitely didn't appreciate it at that age either, because there was a lot.
Nor would I have.
There was a lot going on in that movie that I was like, I could have been like, oh, it's too long. I don't really understand what the point is. There was like, of course you would get that at that age, still in freaking high school without like when I saw it. But the great thing about movies is that when you watch them later as a fully formed adult, like you can get, I think I get at least most of what's going on. I mean, there's a lot that I am still stewing on as well. I mean, I guess at the simplest, like the plot being like the way we explained it, you are watching just like, kind of like, not really a marriage falling apart, but at least,
in turmoil for sure.
In turmoil. And
right.
Then a look at how, there's a lot going on between how, males and females view like sex and all that stuff too. How that whole discussion that she's having with him about the dynamics basically between men and women when it comes to that was pretty spot on her end. And I mean, she probably was overreacting a bit, but like, the gist of what she said about the kind of gender roles when it comes to that made a lot of sense. And the fact that he would say things like, well, I think you're over simplifying it, but yeah, that's kind of what I mean. That it was almost diminishing how she felt about that stuff. And I also think it's very honest, because I even though I made the joke about the weed being like a true serum for her in that moment. Yeah, I feel like certain couples, when there is some kind of issue that's kind of unspoken, elephant in the room.
Yeah, rather, a substance will bring it out.
Yeah, we'll bring that out, and like you can tell in the way that she plays it and the way it was written that she was just waiting for the moment to let him know this. And that party they went to presented her with the opportunity to do it, because she saw him talking to those two women, and she kind of was like, okay, I wonder if he, probably has felt the same way that I felt, or thought about the same things that I thought. Right. And then he kind of is like, no, like he kind of shoots her idea down, like, oh, you haven't. And then she is kind of insulted when he insinuates, well, men only really want to talk to you because of this. And
right. I didn't sense that was what he was implying. You can tell that she interprets it that way. But I looked at her, because it's not until he suggests that. So maybe for those that haven't seen or need a refresher, they start off the movie at a Christmas party at a very wealthy friend and client of Tom Cruise's, and Nicole Kidman dances with this Hungarian stranger who's trying to make advances on her while Tom Cruise is being seduced by these two models, and nothing happens between either party in the marriage. But then they're talking about it the next day. What were you talking to those models about? And who was this guy you were dancing with? And then when Nicole Kidman tells him that this guy was just, dancing with her because he wanted to sleep with her, and he just casually says, "Oh, that's understandable," almost like it's almost
sounds like it's like a compliment.
Oh, you're a beautiful woman. Of course, this guy wants to sleep with you. She's like, oh, that's the only reason the guy would want to talk to me. Well, and then because he kind of shot down her theory about him not wanting to sleep with women because of his like duty to marriage, you can tell, I feel like she contradicts herself in proposing that to him because of the opening scene where you can tell she is so into this guy that she's dancing with at the party, or at least that's my interpretation.
That's the interpretation I got of it too.
She's pretty, boozed up at this point, and their mouths are so close. I literally thought they were going to kiss like at several points during their dance. And it's only when he formally asks her, or, he alludes to the fact that he wanted to show her some of the art collection upstairs, insinuating, he wanted to get her alone upstairs. And then she almost regretfully says like, no, I have a husband, and like kind of flashes her ring. But to me,
like nonchalantly too.
Yeah, exactly. To me, though, that her response to him was dripping with, "Oh, I would if not for this union that I'm in, if not for being married," which is what she accused him of in their conversation the next day. So I really found that she was being hypocritical, which I thought was funny. That her then getting defensive and escalating the argument between the two of them, to me, felt like a defense mechanism for Tom Cruise not indulging her theory that she might be right about how he felt about those girls. And so that was anyway how I interpreted that conversation. But boy, does it ever go from there. And essentially the rest of the movie is the fallout of this one conversation, which I thought was really slick. Yeah.
The impression I got from that discussion too is, she whatever she felt, like she felt guilty for contemplating whatever she was going to do like a year before. Because like she goes back and forth about how she felt, almost being seduced by this naval officer. Right. But then she also I think she said something along the lines of, but like she never like kind of loved her husband more. Like he would never dear to her in that moment. So like she's like, it seems like she's going through like this guilt of like feeling that, but then also wanting to justify what she did by hoping that maybe he has done something similar.
Exactly.
And almost to make her feel better about doing it. And that's the interpretation I got from her, like getting so angry and defensive about it.
Because she was denied that.
Yeah. And when he's so like, no, he's so like, I mean, I love the way he plays it, because he's just like, he's like, you're crazy, basically. This is like the we talking, like, she is not getting what she wants from him, and it's like, I've thought the same thing, or I've gone through this, and and then when he says something along the lines, I think it's like, because you're my wife and I love you and I know that you would never like cheat on me, and then that is what pushes her to like, okay, well then let me tell you like all this stuff, and it's so like cruel too.
It is cruel.
Cruel on top of that too. Like
it is that revelation that she says after he basically, and he does kind of say it in like a cocky way where he is so sure of himself that she would never cheat on him, and you can tell that she's kind of rubbed the wrong way by his audacity, which if you were I would imagine if you were in a loving and good spot in your marriage, you should be confident that your spouse would not ever betray you like that. But she's almost like, how dare you like think that like I am a beautiful sought after woman who could be with anyone, as the Hungarian guy exclaims to her during their dance. And she says, well, you're so confident I would never do this. How about this one time where I saw this handsome naval officer and couldn't get him off my mind even when we were being intimate? To me, her saying that to Tom Cruise made her the antagonist of the movie for me. I don't think like, again, because she's more used in the beginning and the end of the movie. Right. And there's lots of different things you can argue are the antagonists to Tom Cruise's character, I think. But to me, that almost, I wouldn't say the villain of the story, but somebody that was like, puts this thing in motion against Tom Cruise, who's clearly like the protagonist that we're following throughout most of the film. But I didn't know if that was like universally thought, if people thought of them as of Alice, Nicole Kidman's character, as like kind of a neutral party to the story, or if people even look at this as having an antagonist or a protagonist.
Well, I was looking at that too because I was like kind of like, going into it, or like even like just your interpretation of like when the movie starts, like what do you think the state of their marriage is in? Like, are they like happy, or do you kind of feel like there was all like when the movie started, I kept watching it as if like they were doing all the right things when they're on the way to the party. Like it seems like they are like a loving couple and they have the daughter and all that stuff. But I don't know if it's I don't know if there's how Nicole Kidman is playing it more than Tom Cruise, because he seems more aloof to if there is a problem. But like I got hints, at least from her before she even has like a discussion with them after smoking the weed, that she's not completely happy. Like there's something that is missing, whatever that is. And that she conveys that with like a look and like just how she carries herself on the way to that party, and then how she acts during the party when she's dancing with that guy. And I got the impression that we were kind of smack dab in the middle of a marriage that is not as great as it maybe once was.
It's stale, maybe a little bit, and you can tell that she's getting, because she has this bored approach to it in the beginning when they're getting ready to go to the party. She just is pretty nonchalant about everything.
So mundane,
yes, and Tom Cruise. I mean, I'm more focusing on Nicole Kidman's. That's who I was focusing on while watching and like paying attention to her mannerisms when the movie was first getting. So I don't really remember how I remember Tom Cruise was really acting, but he seemed to be just kind of going through the motions, like was fine. Nothing really stood out to me. You could tell though, when he is chatting with those, young, attractive models at the party, that he's enjoying their company and they're kind of rubbing his ego a little bit. But Nicole Kidman appears bored. She's like heavy on the champagne when she gets there, almost to kind of like spice up the night. Even though she
you can tell she doesn't want to be there.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I don't think she
this
really
is more
wanted
his
to be there.
Scene.
It's like
she's kind of along
scene,
for the
his
ride.
friends, she's just going through the motions. Like that's what that's the impression that I got. Like, this is like, this is my duty. I have to go and like kind of show face with my husband, rather than something that she really wants to do. And maybe this is something that she used to want to do in the beginning of their marriage. But I think I can see like the way Tom Cruise's character is in this, that this has become a routine, and this is a routine that she's done with. Like she doesn't really want to be involved in that routine anymore. Where
she's looking for a catalyst to get things kind of more spiced up, and kind of isn't really worried about what that will mean for their marriage. Just kind of see what is going to happen. And I think she really takes that opportunity the following night when they're smoking the weed, and she kind of decides how far she wants to let that conversation go. And I feel like she doesn't even maybe realize how much it affects him going forward.
Yeah, not at all. And it's so belittling to have. I mean, even if someone's high, the way she was like starts laughing at him. And you know what? And also too, I want to give her credit, because sometimes when actors and actresses play drunk or high, it really is. It feels like they're acting, or it's like, oh, like that doesn't seem real. But like when she was like full on uncontrollable, like giggle laughing. I mean, I've seen.
I bought it.
I bought that entirely. And then watching him, like I said, like his. And then she has to tell that story, and it's the way she slowly tells the story, like she reminisces on it in a way that almost like she's like aroused by it.
Like
literally reliving it again, and then seems like she's enjoying it while he is just like completely broken. The more she tells it, and I thought I thought he was really great during that moment too, because you can actually feel his ego breaking.
Well, it's like you might as well see it happen on screen. His reaction perfectly complements her delivery of that story, like so well. And I think it only works that well because they are married in real life at the time, and so part of them are probably imagining for fun, like, what if this is a legit conversation that we would have as partners, and how would we feel about saying that, and how would we react if we were hearing this legitimately? And I feel like that is definitely present in how Tom is reacting to the story from her.
And I imagine he made them do that so many times.
Oh, probably.
I can't see him just being like, oh, we'll just do a few of these takes. I feel like he probably put them through the pace, because it is an important scene. And like, it's a really because it, like you said, it propels the rest of the movie forward. Like without it, like the rest of it doesn't work. So I imagine he made them go over that over and over and over again. And I know that they were married, and like they're adults and professional, but
professional actors.
I don't know how like that doesn't creep into like your real life a little bit. That has to be weird to play a married couple that is on the verge of this kind of like breakdown of their marriage and having to really go there that many times probably.
I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that this movie, if they weren't already going through or at the beginning stages of a divorce, I would say this movie, and just knowing about the shenanigans that Stanley Kubrick pulled behind the scenes and while they were filming, I wanted to get into that next and see if you were familiar with the story about how he forbade Tom Cruise from coming to the set while he was filming a scene with Nicole Kidman and the guy that played the naval officer, who was like himself a young model. And he would put her through, like, there was days of filming this one scene, the scene that Tom Cruise is like imagining of them
reliving
having sex. Right. But so those scenes on set, like Stanley Kubrick wouldn't let Tom Cruise come to the set while she was filming that sequence of him, like naked in bed, rustling around and stuff.
He's known for doing little shady things like that too.
Exactly.
Because he definitely messed with Shelley Duvall a lot during The Shining.
Yes.
And put her through her paces.
So this is definitely part of his.
Yeah. And Nicole Kidman said filming that it was basically borderline pornographic. That's how she said that Stanley Kubrick wanted it and how he wanted it shot. And I guess there's a lot you would do for like a auteur director like that.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming she probably felt comfortable and safe enough to do it. And like they talked about like why it was important for Tom Cruise and her to get at least a look on what the final cut would be, because they had to sign off on all the nudity that was mostly her, because she's naked a lot. They had to sign off on it and make sure that they were all fine with it. And I'm assuming that if you're willing to go there at that point, I mean, you probably were willing to do it for a director like that. And it wasn't like exploitative by means. Like we've talked about on the show too about TV shows and movies that just have gratuitous nudity and sex for the sake of it.
Right.
And I don't think that's the case here. Like every moment in the movie that has that, I think it serves the story mostly, and it's not just there for like shock value per se.
I agree.
And so like I think it's handled really well. I mean, I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I'm sure in 1999 there was a lot made of that orgy scene, and that's pretty tame by today's standards, I think.
Oh, for sure.
And so, but I'm sure back then everyone was like made a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like that, it whatever that he made them do, and I think it's crazy that he told Tom Cruise he couldn't come to set, which is, I mean, and that's her husband. Like he would want.
There's no way that doesn't impact him mentally, like for days. And he forbade Nicole Kidman to even talk to him about what they were filming. So this is completely just messing with him for days. So it's no surprise to me that only a couple of years later they were divorced. It would be crazy to think that this movie had nothing to do with that.
That allows him to go method without going method. I mean,
right.
Like, you have to
it's smart, if not manipulative.
Smart. And like I know, like for the sake of the movie and the performances, that's why Stanley Kubrick did that, because I think he probably thought if he was there that maybe she wouldn't do as much as she would do if
it
she
would
was
impact
let
her
alone.
performance. Right.
Yeah, and it impacts his because he didn't get to see of it. So all the stuff all the things that he's picturing in his head of what that might have been like, at least before he saw the movie. It's probably all very true. He didn't really know like what they even did in those scenes. So that's real frustration there. And I mean, some might say that's cruel because Stanley Kubrick is known for doing stuff like that. But it works. I mean, I think it gets the best out of the people in the movie.
There's a method to the madness, no doubt. I think that's the lengths that he would go to as a director are absolutely part and partial to why he has the legacy that he has as one of the greatest, guys to ever do it behind the camera. So,
I thought it was interesting too last week because Nicole Kidman doesn't really talk about Tom Cruise much anymore since they divorced. And if you guys want to watch like Going Clear, it's a Scientology documentary. There could be a reason why she doesn't really talk about it. But she did talk about Eyes Wide Shut last week, and they asked her if the director took any inspiration from their actual marriage, and she said that I think that he was miming it a bit. He said there were ideas Kubrick was interested in. He asked a lot of questions, but he had a strong sense of the story he was telling. He said, I do remember him saying triangles are hard. You have to tread carefully when it's a triangle because one person can feel ganged up on, but he was aware of that and knew how to manage us. And then she said she never felt ganged up while making the movie, and that she and Cruise had very different relationships with the filmmaker individually. So that's pretty interesting too. That she said there's something about being a woman in that equation too. And Stanley liked women. He had a different relationship with Tom. They worked more closely together on his character. Kidman also recalled sharing a trailer with Cruise because the budget wasn't big enough for both of them to have their own trailer. And they said they had a home 10 minutes away where they shot in London for the movie. And but yeah, I think it's interesting that he had a different relationship with Cruise compared to her. And it was probably a little, the way she described it, he works more closely with him on character, but he is on screen more than her. So I guess that would make
his character's psyche is basically, you know, the foundation of the movie. It would make sense that Kubrick wanted to make sure him and Tom Cruise were on the same page with what Bill is thinking throughout and, you know, what his motivations are. Like, we don't really get to know a lot about the character of Alice other than, you know, her essentially kind of wanting to take verbal revenge against him and bring his ego down a bit. But other than that, it's really like the character of Bill's show. We're basically in his mind for the next, you know, 2.5 hours.
Speaking on that scene, she said that at that scene we're talking about took many weeks to shoot. A lot of that was rehearsing in the bedroom and then him not liking what we'd done. So we ended up reworking it, constructing it as we went along. There was no need to rush. Stanley would never go over budget. What he bought with his movies was time. And she said the scene ultimately evolved to what through talks between Kidman, Cruise, and Kubrick. And it really evolved from there. They said they did spend 6 or 8 weeks together just going over that scene. So between like going over it and filming it, 6 to 8 weeks.
2 months to shoot
one scene, but it is a pivotal scene in the movie, so I get it. But
you're gonna spend
you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of David Fincher. They say David Fincher's like this with like the mini takes. I don't know if he's as bad as, I mean, I don't want to say bad, but as
not bad, like
detailed.
There you go.
As Stanley Kubrick was, but man, I can't imagine doing a scene like this over and over again because you know some actors are very like once they're overdoing a scene, they will say like, "I think we got it," like it's done, and like and depending on like the stature of the actor, like how big, like at that time, Nicole, maybe not her so much, but Tom Cruise at that time, if he was done, he'd have been like, "Yeah, we're not doing this anymore." If he wanted but I think they they seem to have a very confident and respectful relationship with Stanley Kubrick. They probably just trusted him to. Well,
especially
guide them in the right direction.
Considering he had not at this time put out a movie, it was 9 years when they started. 9 years after his last movie, Full Metal Jacket. By the time Eyes Wide Shut goes into production, the guy was pretty, notorious for taking long breaks in between his movies. I'm sure that actors were jumping at the chance to work with Stanley Kubrick for the first time in a decade. It ended up being 12 years in between movies by the time Eyes Wide Shut came out. So I would imagine that would come with lots of patience to work with the guy. So
that
would only make sense to me.
Just to put things into perspective for people, I know we keep saying this like very long shoot. They said principal photography began in November 1996. Now keep in mind this movie did not come out until July 16th, 1999. So there's a scene with Vanessa Shaw who plays Domino. She was initially contracted for 2 weeks, but ended up working for 2 months. And then there was something that I guess Harvey Keitel and Gary Oldman were going to be involved in on the movie, but that got cut. And Gary Oldman said that Harvey Keitel got over Stanley Kubrick wanting to do a scene of him walking through the door multiple times. So in that case, an actor was like, "Yeah, I don't want to do this."
So apparently, if this is the same sequence I'm thinking of, I thought it involved Tom Cruise, but maybe it involved Harvey Keitel. But supposedly, this scene of someone walking through a door, there was 95 takes of it. Yeah, like, that must be where he was like, "I've had enough." But so apparently, he was like on the production for like about halfway through before he was fired / quit, like Harvey Keitel. So I thought that was pretty, I didn't know about that till after. Like his character's not even, maybe they recast him. I don't even know what happened to his character, but
so they said that so initially Jennifer Jason Leigh and Harvey Keitel were going to be the characters that Sidney Pollack and Marie Richardson plays in the film. And then decades later, Keitel admitted that he had quit after feeling like Kubrick had disrespected him. And then Gary Oldman clarified that the breaking point was after Kubrick asked Keitel to do dozens of takes of a scene of his character walking through the door, which ended up being 95 takes. I don't
blame him. That's quite insane.
And the character Domino Vanessa Shaw, I think she's in one scene, or well, I guess technically two. He meets her on the street and then they go into her apartment. So I guess that's technically two scenes. And like the fact that she was contracted for 2 weeks and ended up working in the movie for 2 months for 2 scenes is ridiculous. But I mean, probably a good moment for her. She got to work with Stanley Kubrick, and actually that scene with her and him is actually pretty good, well written. I actually thought it was a lot of the stuff that Tom Cruise, it's like kind of hero's journey that Tom Cruise goes on his own.
Yeah.
after his wife completely destroys his ego. It was interesting. I still don't know how to like take it all in per se.
There's a lot of theories on if the movie was even just a dream, like
a
what
dream,
things even
and that's how he
happened,
shoots it, right?
Right.
Like it looks like a dreamscape completely, and but I'm going with the idea that it was all happening. I mean, especially by the end of it, once he fully explains to her, I guess he explains to her.
Right.
We're to assume that he tells her everything. I do love that. I don't want to. I don't want to skip to the end, but I did love that he's like, "I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything." And then that next cut is just her like kind of like smoking a cigarette, and kind of you can tell like
they've been crying.
That was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And she's not even saying anything. Like, okay. And I'm thinking to myself too that I was like, well, this is kind of your fault.
Yeah,
like you kind of
it really is.
this. And then like what a lot of married couples do when they're trying to hide the fact that they're fighting from their kids, and she kind of makes a comment of like, well, you know, Elena expects us to take her Christmas shopping today, so it's almost like figure out how to clean this up. We have to figure out how to do this so our daughter doesn't know like what's going on, because we have to make this day special for her, which is, you know, God, the more you learn about once you become an adult, because I know a lot of couples who've gone through, like couples I know who got married early, like you know, in their 20s, when we were in our 20s, they experienced similar things or had kids early. And I've heard stories from a lot of them where, you know, they've had to get along for the sake of like their kids. And I thinking that was the right thing to do, you know, at the time, like stay in it and figure it out. So there's a lot of real stuff going on in the movie that is mixed in with all this kind of surreal stuff that you have to kind of figure out what does it all mean and how important. I mean, what is he trying to say by putting all this stuff in there? Like, I kept struggling with the fact like it was a very real story, and I really felt like this is something I could see real people going through. But then it would get, then so much of the movie would just get offbeat and weird. And I don't mean weird in a way that was like, oh, I didn't like it weird. Like, it was always fascinating. I'm just gonna say that I was never bored by it. I was never like, this is too confusing, I don't get it. I appreciated everything, or mostly everything that he did in the movie. It was just, you know, you're dealing with like this real kind of like trauma between a couple, and then all this other stuff is thrown in. It's like, oh well,
yeah.
It's like
this is why like part of me like prescribes to the idea that maybe some, if not all, of what we see Tom Cruise go on, like this journey or odyssey as it's usually like referred to as, may be a dream. Because so if you take it at like face value, we've got like he gets his ego like shattered by his wife, who professes that she had this fantasy about this guy and hasn't stopped thinking about him. And then we see him, he gets called out of the room like to go check up on a patient, and basically every interaction that we see him have after that is like sexually motivated or involved. And we see him have like, what if you look at it, like if you compare it to a dream, it's like he's almost living out like all these different sorts of fantasies with women. You have like the prostitute encounter, you've got like the one that he gets called away from to, where has like this woman that he hardly knows like professing her love for him and wanting to do it right there. You've got the, you know, the mansion orgy, which is probably lots of people's, you know, weird fantasy. And what else? Like, there's so many different random sexual encounters, like the young girl at the shop.
Oh yeah, with the two Asian dudes trying to get the costume. Yeah, who's Lily Sobieski. I think that's one of her like first big movies too.
She looked, you know what? She reminded me of Jenna Malone. I don't know where if I'd seen her before.
She gets a lot of Jenna Malone, Helen Hunt, like young Helen Hunt. Like she kind of looks like that. But yeah, I think that's one of her first big roles. Even though she's not really in it that much, but she had a pretty decent acting career for a little bit through the early 2000s. But yeah, but you're right. I mean, I actually dig that point a lot, because there are a lot of these things being thrown at him that are fantasies, not so much like stuff that would really be happening to someone in a day in a
especially
life.
not in
You know?
one day, right? Like certainly a
Yeah.
couple of these scenarios are plausible, but like for all these to happen simultaneously, it's like, okay, this makes me feel like this is somebody who's like trying to mentally go to this place where he can like get back at her by living one of these fantasies, but nothing ever
Yeah.
comes to fruition. She keeps calling him back, like physically, like interrupting these endeavors, which kind of legitimizes the point that he said earlier about her, that like women need love, like they're not going, that's why they wouldn't cheat, because they need love as like the foundation of sex. And that kind of made me feel like his words were coming back to haunt him.
Yeah, I actually dig that. I also thought it was interesting too to think of it in a way that because he created that whole he had that whole dynamic with her in that conversation where he was basically trying to assign gender roles, like this is what men do and this is what women do. And I thought it was interesting that in all of his encounters, he can't make something happen that she probably could make happen if she wanted to. So like every time that he is put in a situation where it's being presented to him where he can never go through with it, or something goes awry.
Yeah, exactly.
Or interrupts it. So I also thought if it's not a dream, I thought it was interesting that like, you know, what's being thrown in his face too is the fact that like, yeah, you're a man and you still can't do the things that you know, your wife was able to you know, at least think about. And like you can't even get, you know, past the starting line at all with it.
Yeah, and we see her being able to do these things, like with the opening scene of the party. It was really up to her to follow through with it, and she decides not to. So, like, I guess we are really seeing like his masculinity challenged at almost every stage after, like starting with that conversation, including the scene. I can't remember if it's before or after he meets Domino, when he's walking on the street and the 6 guys kind of bully him and
I think it's before.
Yeah.
When they're like they're calling him like a bunch of derogatory names. Like,
right. And he doesn't do anything to stick up for himself or anything.
Yeah. The whole movie seems like it's just an assault on his manhood after that.
It's ultimately that I haven't really reconciled with what I think of the message was. I just haven't had the time to reflect on it enough, or maybe I haven't heard it pitched in a way that I concretely agree with. But I understand, and like what is apparent to me is that yes, his wife challenges his perception of their marriage and their gender roles in that marriage, and then we see him systematically kind of get brought down in every sequence, like following that, where he has like these different opportunities. He's, like you said, he's not able to capitalize on them. He's kind of brought back down to earth a little bit. But I'm ultimately wondering, like, what does he learn by the end? Is there something going forward? Like, I guess they kind of reconcile. So do you think this was just a big lesson that he needed to learn?
I feel like they seem like they get to a place where they're just like comfortable in their own issues and their problems. Like they both, like she kind of alludes to that they kind of both did things that were wrong. And I think they get to a place where they're like, I was wrong and you were wrong. But we still like love each other. Like I think she still has love for him. I mean, like that, even though she doesn't really convey it a lot, I think she does. Like the scene where I was trying to figure out how I felt about when he gets home towards the end of the movie and he sees the mask in the bed and he starts crying, and she wakes up to it and she doesn't like embrace him right away as like a loving wife might, like if you see your husband like breaking down, but she does when he does lean into her, she does comfort him. So I was like confused, like, well, does she must care. Like she didn't do what I thought you would do in that situation where like I mean he's bawling, these aren't just like, you know, light tears, he's breaking down,
making it rain.
And she just kind of stares at him confused for a minute, and then it's not until he like falls into her that she embraces him. But I still think even if that in that little moment there is some love there, like she still cares about him. Or maybe this whole time like there wasn't something about him that like he wasn't as masculine or manly as she needed him to be. Like maybe that's another thing too, like that their relationship dynamic might have just been off because of that. Like, he doesn't excite her as much as he used to, so that's why she's been doing the things that she's been doing. And there's so much to look into that relationship, which is why I wish she had more scenes, because I think her dynamic would have been a lot of really interesting to jump into as well, because it is at the end of the day, it's his story, I think, more than hers.
But
she certainly would have been an interesting one to dive into her psyche a bit more.
Agreed. And like what her motivation was for kind of setting him on this journey, if she even meant to, if she was relishing in his anguish. Because you know that one of the more famous scenes from what I gather in the movie is like her in that like kind of purple shirt at the coffee table. She's smoking a cigarette. She's just gives him the look. It's near the end of the film, and to me, it was conveying sort of like, I know what you're going through right now, but like I don't know if you know that I know, or I honestly don't even.
Are you talking about the moment where like they're sitting at the table with the daughter?
I think she's like teaching her math or something.
And she has like the glasses on,
yes.
and then he starts replaying in his head that dream that she said she had.
Yes.
Yeah. I know you're talking. Yeah.
But I don't know if I know for sure what she's trying to convey to him or not.
Because the look is like kind of like, it does seem like I know something's up.
Yeah. But she doesn't seem like forgiving about it. She's almost, to me, I interpret it like she's almost like enjoying like what she thinks she might, be doing to him by like telling him all this stuff. I'm glad you mentioned the dream that she had, because this is the same scene where he gets back at night and sees the mask on the pillow, right? And she's having this dream, and he wakes her up by like crying, and then is saying that he'll tell her everything. And is it then that she tells him what?
No, actually,
or is there are these different scenes?
Different. So he comes back. He comes back initially at like 4 a.m. He tells her, and then she's like waking up, and then she tells him about the dream, and he goes back out after she tells him about that. And then later is when he comes back after he's been like, I don't want to say chased, but stalked by these weird people from this from this orgy that he went to, and making it clear that they know who he is, where he lives, and all that stuff too as well.
And that's when he tells her, "I'll tell you everything," and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the dream though that she has, I was kind of looking for the significance of what I thought that was. I did notice there's some parallels in the dream that she mentions to him that she was having.
Going on at the orgy?
Yeah, to everything, the story that his odyssey that he goes on. But I was kind of wondering like why she's so emotional about this dream, like why she feels compelled to like laugh at him, like watching her sleep with all these men in the dream. I wanted to hear your thoughts, and if you had like if you'd come to a conclusion about the significance of it, or if it's just like the last thing to break him down fully that he needs to hear. I think it is the
last thing to break him down fully, and I also think it just adds to the whole because she does mention about how she laughed about basically him watching her get ravaged by a group of men, and I think it does come down to the masculinity thing again. Like she feels this weird sense to like kind of belittle him at the I almost wonder if she feels like if she does that it will make him amp up and be like more of a man, right? But it almost is like weird reverse psychology, and it's not and it's not something that's clearly working. But yeah, that's the impression I got from it. Like she, I think she's trying to make him be more of a man to her, and he's just not. Which I think is like interesting about casting Tom Cruise in this, because Tom Cruise, especially in 1999, he looks the part of someone who's very cocky and confident.
Yes,
but he also can really convey someone who would be in that position, who is in way over his head, who isn't quite as cocky or confident as he would like to think he is. So like looks wise, he looks the part of someone that has it all and is has it all together. But he also can kind of convey this kind of like, I don't want to say innocence, but like definitely not, he's not at a point that she's at all. And it seemed like he would be based on like who he is. And I'm not just saying just like as Tom Cruise, just like who he's playing in that movie. Like, he's a doctor. They clearly have a lot of money. They clearly are very comfortable with them, with themselves, and they have a lot of, at least he has a lot of high profile friends, I guess. Like she's kind of just along for the ride, it seems.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's what it kind of comes down to. At least that's what I got from it. I'm sure other people have other interpretations of
I think there's lots of interpretations, and that's kind of why I'm struggling to like really narrow it down. I don't even know if it's not necessary that you do have all the answers. I'd like to feel complete in how I feel about the movie. I'm just not there yet, which is why I'm relishing in all these awesome explanations and just talking to other people about it.
Who'd you watch it with?
Cam, who had seen it before, also years before.
Okay. Did he have like any thoughts on, or he's kind of like,
Well, because I asked, it's funny, we were watching it and maybe like 2/3 of the way through or somewhere near. I don't remember the scene that was playing when I asked him, but I remember like I was at the point where like Tom Cruise's character is well on his journey throughout the night and he's gone through many of the scenarios that we've been talking about. I was struggling to see if I was supposed to be taking this at face value or not, if this was all some allegory for something greater, which I'm sure, there is somewhere out there.
Yeah.
Because that's how I usually am looking at Stanley Kubrick movies, at least his later movies all seem to have multiple meanings in what you're watching. And he's such a meticulous guy. Every shot, every prop in the movie has some sort of meaning. And so I asked him, I said, like, is there an allegory I haven't picked up on yet, or will it make more sense near the end? Because like I'm kind of watching this and taking it at face value, like with what he's experiencing. And yeah, he said he kind of agreed at that point that we're meant to be watching this as Tom Cruise going through the motions after having his ego shattered, and he's kind of not knowing where he is in his marriage right now and what he's going to do about it. And we kind of talked about it after. I don't think we really got into much of the nitty gritty about if there's an alternate meaning or anything. But this is really the first full length conversation I've had about it since.
I mean, I'm kind of picking up what you're putting down about it, at least some of it being a dream, especially because like the situations that are thrown his way. I mean, not saying that someone like him couldn't be put in those situations. I mean,
right.
He looks like Tom Cruise,
right?
Like he could maybe find himself in those situations, but it's so out there that it does feel like because they all don't really feel like real life scenarios. They all feel like fantasies, like something he would think up
like
in
fantasies,
his head,
exactly,
and be like, oh, like if I can make myself do. The only reason why I like think that a lot of it is rooted in reality because he can't go through with it. I mean, I feel like if it was a dream and it's a fantasy, he could go through with it.
Right.
We'd have these things, right?
Right.
He have more control over that. But it does help that the cinematography is Larry Smith. Everything about the movie, the look of it, especially once he leaves the house and goes on that journey, it does look like a dream. Like the color palette feels very dreamlike throughout. And I think that's what made it easy to kind of get into. Like I was kind of sucked into it visually. And then also, but it was also like distracting too. I was so sucked into the visuals that I was like, am I missing anything that I should be picking up on as far as like the story was concerned? And like you said, like I was kind of struggling with like, should I take it at face value or is there like a deeper, meaning to all this? And I feel like I'm in your boat. I feel like I would have to watch it again to really.
Yes, I need to see it again soon.
And maybe especially watch it again after like reading up about it after the movie was over. Because there was stuff I was reading, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, I wish I would have like watched it with that lens a bit, to kind of maybe would have viewed it differently. I don't think my viewing of it was like hampered by like trying to go through all these thoughts of like what was, what the true meaning was. Because I think that ultimately made it more interesting as a movie.
I agree.
Bounce back and forth in my brain of like, well, what's going on here and what's going on there. But yeah, I wish I had. Maybe there isn't meant to be like one hard answer about what it is, because I mean that's the good thing about movies. Sometimes it's all open to interpretation.
Exactly.
But I would like to maybe watch it with my own surefire, opinion,
exactly.
Like
that's what I like doing too. I love movies. Ambiguity is something that I love in a story. But sometimes there's so much to decipher that I don't really know where I lie, and that's kind of like what I was experiencing while watching this. And maybe a rewatch will kind of make me realize it's not that complex, or it's more complex than I even think. But one thing, actually, I can't believe we didn't mention this earlier, but the score in this movie also lent this dreamlike quality to, or more like nightmarish throughout. That like piano score is so like intimidating to me.
It's creepy. It's fun.
Invasive. It is creepy.
So a lot of the piano stuff takes place at the orgy scene at the mansion, and then that piano is another hint of like if there's any scene involving anyone that was maybe there later in the movie, like when he's being followed and all that other stuff, that starts playing. And you're right, it is invasive. It doesn't sound completely like John Carpenter's Halloween music, but it kind of reminded me of that, where it's just it feels like it was so vibes, It also feels like it's so simple but like effective too. It felt like a lot of that the orgy scene is, at least when he gets called downstairs, felt like a horror movie. I like when I was watching it, I was like, this is unsettling and a little creepy that he has to stand in the middle of all these people, and they're like, they had this creepy dude, all wearing masks, asking him what the password is, and he knew the one to get in, and he's like, okay, well, what's the password for the house? And he didn't know, and then as soon as he said, take off your mask, I was like, all right. And then when he goes like, now remove your clothes, and like honestly, Tom Cruise's like confusion of like what is actually how I was watching it. I was like, why is he gonna do that? And he's like, and he says it again, like, remove your clothes, or do you want us to do it for you? And I don't know, that whole scene, I will say, other than the weed scene, and not because it's an orgy scene, you perverts, it just was a really well constructed scene. Like that, I felt like that could have just been its own little short film. And totally. like it's just really it looks great, the music's great in it. It really gives this feeling of like you're being extremely like unsettled, and like it also adds to the whole thing about it being a dream or a fantasy. The fact that like he can't even like in his mind, and it, like if this was real, he can't even make something happen here.
Right.
That kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, but like I did like the notion of like, you don't belong here, that there's something like that he wasn't like the right fit to even be there, and it was like noticeable, especially when Sidney Pollack tells him later when he's like, oh yeah, I knew you were there. And, most of these people show up in limos, and you pulled up in like a taxi cab and had him wait outside for you. I know I thought that whole scene was good, and I actually thought the stuff with was her name Mandy, like the girl that was the one that was warning him about leaving.
Yep.
I thought that was really interesting too. Like she was like, hey, they're talking, you need to get out of here. And he won't do it. And, to save him, she volunteers as tribute, basically. And I don't know, really well done scene. It was just creepy and unsettling. And that music, that piano score is so creepy. And like when he's getting followed by that one, I guess someone from the mansion, like down the streets, and he like and the music just kind of escalates as it goes along, and it makes the scene even more. And like, I don't know, just watching this bald dude from a distance, just like watching him, and when he does like that slow walk across the street and never turns away from looking at him, he just like walks while staring at him. It was so well done. Like it could have been its own little horror movie, dude.
I want to know I agree, like so many components of that scene, which is actually quite lengthy, like lend itself
very long
horror. It was great. It was the sequence, rather, I guess would be more appropriate, that I was waiting for in this movie. Like I knew bits and pieces. I'd seen shots from it before. I knew that there was this cult, sex orgy scene in this movie, but didn't really know much more about it. So I was waiting for that sequence, and it's a lot more than I had even lent myself to believe it.
And relatively tasteful. Like not like I that's why I like meant earlier, like it's not like totally gratuitous. Like it was still something like artful about the whole scene. That didn't really feel like pornographic or like gratuitous at all. So I mean, finding that balance must have been interesting for a director to do that. I mean,
only imagine how much time they spent.
And I don't know how long they do that.
But I wanted to know what you make of all the conspiracies and theories that it was that scene or sequence's inclusion in the movie that may have ended up with or cost Stanley Kubrick his life, because this is something that I was not aware of any of this stuff.
Like, almost like this like occult kind of
Some
angle.
people say, what's undisputed is, of course, he did die like less than a week after showing Warner Brothers the cut of this movie, and apparently people report he was in good health while making his movie. He was only in his 60s, I think, and he died of
70. He died at 70. So he died at 70.
Okay,
so still fairly. I mean,
and so some people think that by showing what the elites get up to on their weekends,
it's almost like secret society.
That somebody or people didn't like it, and he ruffled some feathers, and that maybe he was killed. But I don't know. I think it's interesting to think about, and especially the other pieces of evidence we have. I mean, not unbelievable to think that a guy that was 70 years old, stressful career, had a heart attack, but a lot of it, some of it, there's enough that doesn't add up that I think it's interesting to chew on. But I was not aware of this conspiracy or this theory at all until after.
I kind of loosely heard about it, and I think it's interesting to think about, because you're right. A lot of these rich elite people, they like to do these things behind closed doors, and they don't want anyone to know about it. So then you have someone craft a whole sequence around the rich elite
a pretty influential person himself too.
Yeah, getting up to stuff like this. And honestly, this is kind of like not entirely like uncommon. Like you kind of hear about this like whispers about these things and
Right.
And usually kind of elite, rich,
especially in the last few
high
years,
society,
post
high society.
Epstein. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is interesting to chew on because I mean it's interesting because like that whole sequence isn't gratuitous, but it does show a lot as far as what they could be getting up to and why they would want to keep something like that a secret. And and I loved the threats that they give to him are not like really like elaborate. They're so kind of like how I imagine like a high society rich elite person would threaten someone.
Right.
And then like I remember when like when he went back there and they gave him the letter and it had his name on it, and then the note was basically like a very proper way of being like, hey, like stop poking around. Like I hope this second warning will suffice. We don't want to have to do this anymore. I know it is interesting to chew on. I would hope that's not what happened. I imagine that Stanley Kubrick lived a very, and by hard life I don't mean like he did a lot or was up to a lot of things. I think he suffered for his art and then made his actors suffer for their art too while doing his movies. I can't imagine on any on the youngest person like a 400-day shooting schedule would be hard on anybody. And now imagine getting up there in age and not to say that this movie, I mean it's just a erotic thriller drama. There's not a lot really going on as far as like there's not a lot of action and all that stuff. So but like there's still a lot of like high emotion involved and a lot of psychological stuff involved in that, and like doing these things over and over and over again, I'd imagine it would be very taxing on the mind and the body. And he's known for doing that across the majority of his movies. Like almost everything that he's done, there's some kind of story about how treacherous the shoot was. A lot of people talk about it later. They benefited from it as performers. They liked it. It was interesting saying that they said the morale got really low on this movie though because they were shooting so long. It was just like they were just like done.
People were begging to be fired or like hoping that they would be fired so they'd be released.
He actually made Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman not do any other projects while they were making it, which is a lot to ask. That's 3 years of their time, like however long, 14 months of their time where they could be picking up other projects. That's a big ask, but like, I mean, I get it. I get not wanting them to be distracted by other materials so they can focus on this because this is really heavy stuff for them to do. And, I can't imagine him trying to like do a Mission Impossible while also doing this,
right.
So I get his angle on it, like why he needed them to like work so hard. But I just imagine that would be hard. Like it had to be hard on him too, just as like a, director. Like this wasn't like easy stuff that he was doing across his career at all. But I mean, if anything, I love like this makes me want to rewatch a lot of his movies because there's so many of his movies I've been watching in a really long time.
Okay.
And while I was watching this, I was like, man, we don't really have a lot of provocative filmmakers like this anymore that are willing to do like they're willing to go there like this and convince a major studio to do it. I mean, Warner Brothers. I mean, we talk about how it's gambling on like kind of not only original ideas but kind of like out there ideas. And this was even though they had two big actors attached to this movie, it was a big, I think, ask of them to try to sell this. I mean, they released it in the heart of the summer. I mean, I can't believe this came out in July. This was a summer movie.
Sure that.
Actually. And the budget's only like $65 million. So like, it's not like a huge budget based around what like Tom Cruise was doing at the time and since. But I mean, I think they thought they could completely bank on Tom Cruise and it would be a big summer hit. It didn't flop per se. It made $55 million here, and I think it made up for it, internationally.
Right.
It was one of his like Tom Cruise's lowest grossing movies, like domestically. But I can't imagine this being like a huge mainstream hit with casual moviegoers. Like the fact that they didn't release this during the winter is like or fall. It surprises me. And I also want to ask you too, when you were watching it, because this got like no award season love whatsoever. And I was wondering if you thought, oh, they did get their best original score nomination at the Golden Globes. That's it.
Okay. Wow.
But I was wondering if you were surprised. Someone actually posted on the 25th anniversary on X. They said, like, happy 25 years to Eyes Wide Shut. I just need you all to remember that we gave the Cider House Rules several Oscar nominations in that year, including Best Picture, and this got 0, and that's not fair. But when you looked at it, were you like, this could have been an award prestige movie, or were you how'd you feel about like in that regard?
More for the technicals, like set design. I don't think really, as much as I thought Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise are great, I didn't really like get Oscar vibes from them. I got
them like, more from her than him,
for sure. Like, if it was going to go to one of them, I would say her.
Yeah,
as, like supporting though, I would say more than lead. But I guess I don't know. Actually, considering how long the movie is, maybe I have to look at her screen time. I don't really. She'd be the leading actress. I think
in today's day and age, she would. So you know how it reminds me of that situation with like Fences with Denzel Washington and Viola Davis, where she's the only female lead, but she went supporting because that was her best shot of winning, and that's how she won. Technically, I guess Nicole Kidman would be the female lead, but she's supporting him.
Yes, that's how
she would mean it. And that if she would go in that route.
But even then,
some people might think it's cheating. They're like, oh well,
right.
I guess.
I think like score, set design, costumes, like those could all be. I have to look at the 99 awards contenders, but like I could see this. Like it's honestly crazy to me that it didn't get like best pick, like something by Kubrick, especially at this stage in his career. Like, just seems like a no-brainer that he would have like a director or best picture. And I know he wasn't, a lot of his movies didn't even get nom for that sort of thing. So I think he was nominated for 2001. I know we just talked about this not that long ago, but his movies weren't big Oscar darlings, which is weird in hindsight, considering how influential he is still to this day and how he'll go down as probably the greatest director ever. But yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, he challenged a lot of norms, which I think is also important. I was surprised it didn't get any real award season love, and I think back then they could have planned on the fact that like, it was released during the summer. It has like a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay.
76%, which isn't bad by any means. But the cinema score, you could tell that moviegoers were like, it got a D-, which you could tell that they were not picking up what he was putting down. And I just, as someone that can remember the marketing for the movie, they really obscured what the movie was. It was the marketing was very vague about what happened. Like the first teaser trailer was that the scene where she's standing naked in front of the mirror and he comes up behind her, Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
That was the first teaser trailer, and it was to that song that played in the movie, and that was it. And then all the other TV spots made it look more like a thriller, and they could. I think Stanley Kubrick wanted them to be vague about what the movie was in the marketing. Warner Brothers felt that was the best route to at least get people intrigued because it was going to be a tough movie to sell. Even if you were to sell it as a traditional movie about a marriage in disarray, once people saw it, they'd be like, well, this is not just that. It's something completely different too. But yeah, I imagine this was a tough sell to mainstream, even with Tom Cruise attached to it. Mm-hmm. Nicole, I keep saying that because Nicole Kidman wasn't a huge star at that point yet. She was like definitely coming into blossoming. By the time I think she does Moulin Rouge in like 2002, so like that is when she kind of completely takes off. She gets nominated for an Oscar and all that. But this was, Tom Cruise was a bankable, and he still is, but through the mid, like I guess late 80s through the 90s and early 2000s, he was a bankable box office star. Like everything was, he was at
the height of his career, really, during the night, like this time, I would say.
Yeah. And I know that there was talk about when Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger were considered for this, and Stanley Kubrick liked. He said something that he said Tom Cruise had this kind of like, he wanted someone that had this like Harrison Ford kind of good-looking guy quality to him, and that's what Tom Cruise had. And I think low key, I think Stanley Kubrick did like that, which is why at the time he suggested Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger because they were married at the time too. I think he wanted some a married acting couple to do
Clearly,
this movie.
yeah.
And so he could ruin their marriage. No, I don't think it was that. I just think he really, I don't think there's a lot. I mean, there's acting, and you could have gotten two people who didn't know each other to play a married couple, and it would have worked. But there is an added layer to like, there's a lot of subtext and all that you don't get without knowing that they were married at the time of making the movie. It adds a lot to what's going on, I think.
And I really do think that Kubrick was wanting to exploit that from an actual married couple without a doubt, just, considering the performances and movies that he's made and like, his just very direct style of filmmaking, that would make complete sense. That's clearly what he was after.
Yep. I want to bring this up to you because I brought up the whole, like what the movie is as far as genre. And they said the film was described by some reviewers and partially marketed as an erotic thriller, a characterization disputed by others. It is classified as such in the book, The Erotic Thriller in Contemporary Cinema by Linda Ruth Williams, and was described as such in news articles about Cruise and Kidman's lawsuit over assertions they saw a sex therapist during filming. The positive review in Compulsive Celia describes it as an erotic thriller upon first viewing, but actually a complex story about marriage and sexuality. It said, however, some reviewers don't agree with this, and they said that it was a misleading classification, saying that no one familiar with the cold precision of Kubrick's work will be surprised that this isn't the steamy erotic thriller a synopsis or the ads might suggest. Writing in several about the genre of erotic thriller for Cine Action in 2001, Douglas Keesley states that whatever Eyes Wide Shut's actual type, it was at least marketed as an erotic thriller, and it's not quite that, and it wasn't fair to sell it as such.
Okay, I agree with that last point. It is erotic in many places, and I'd say there's enough in there that you can argue it's a thriller, especially if you just like consider that, Tom Cruise kind of goes down this rabbit hole, stumbles upon this weird sex cult that then starts to follow him in real life and threaten him. Like that's pretty much like that would compose a thriller, I think, if you ask me. But is it an erotic thriller? I think, the fact that you can make the argument kind of undermines that as a genre, but it's not wrong to call it that. But it is much more, like, to that last article's point. Like I do like, when I consider it, if I were to recommend it to someone in the future, I would kind of describe it as like an analysis of like a marriage in turmoil, like more so than an erotic thriller. An erotic thriller, like, although I don't think it's wrong, it does kind of like paint a certain picture that this does not fall into. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Have you ever seen Closer?
What, Closer?
So, yeah, it's with Julia Roberts and Jude Law and Natalie Portman, Clive Owen. It's not nearly as dark as this, but it's another movie about couples basically like kind of falling apart at the seams. I don't know why I like movies like that, whatever. But it reminds me of that, and where like there's much more going on than maybe one type of genre would do it justice.
Okay, I agree.
I agree. There are some thriller elements in it. All the stuff from the mansion and his like being pursued by those people from there. He is essentially being stalked and chased at that point. So like there's aspects of the movie that I think have thriller elements to it. It is erotic in places. Like again, like by today's standards, I think this would be considered tame. Now.
For sure, but in the context of the 90s, like borderline pornographic in places.
And I think it was a big deal having those two performers be in a movie like this because they really hadn't done something like this, especially him.
Right.
So I think that had a lot to do with how they were. I do remember they sold the sex of it in the trailers and stuff, and that was supposed to be like what would entice people to go see it. And we've talked. I think I've talked about this. I don't know if it's been with you on here or other people who've been on, but I'm not entirely a fan of misleading marketing. But
I mean, what's to like about that, right? You want to know what you're getting sold. I completely agree.
But I also think this would be a tough one to market properly.
Yes, I'm glad I'm not in charge of that.
Without giving anything away. And also, too, guys, if you're looking for an unconventional Christmas movie, this could be one because it's set during the holiday season.
Yes, yeah, I'm glad I had this like a mental note to bring this up, and I'd completely forgotten to make that point. So I'm glad that you caught that. Definitely add it to your unconventional Christmas list. Although like not even more unconventional, even unconventional for an unconventional Christmas movie. There's like literally no like Christianity, like imagery, Christian imagery, no mention of like Jesus Christ or like his death or like nothing that you'd see in a Christmas movie other than like Christmas trees and like the odd
and then the lights and
like
all
decorations and lights and stuff. Like there's literally no other mention to it being the holidays like at all. It's like very strange. It makes me wonder like what is the significance of setting it at Christmas?
Well, I mean, I think we talked about this when we were talking about Black Christmas. I just like it being that the cheeriness of what Christmas represents being juxtaposed with this really dark story.
Okay.
And I kind of think that is what maybe setting it at Christmas did, because it should be a happy, cheery time for all involved, and that
Right.
and it's being like kind of put in with like this very heavy, dramatic, dark.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Narrative. But yeah, I never even thought, because I hadn't watched the movie so long that I kind of forgot that it took place during Christmas, and I was like, this might get thrown into the unconventional Christmas movie. But
I mean, it fits.
There's no songs or carols or anything in it, but
no, not even like a depiction of Santa Claus anywhere. Like literally nothing. It's very, very funny.
But yeah, as far as reviews, Roger Ebert gave it 3.5. He gave it 3.5 stars out of 4. He said Kubrick's great achievement in the film is to find and hold an odd, unsettling, sometimes erotic tone for the Doctor Strange encounters. He praised the individual dreamlike atmosphere of the separate scenes and called the choice of Christmas theme lighting garish, like an urban sideshow. Reviewer James Bernelli of Real Review said it was one of Kubrick's best films, along with considering Kidman consistently excellent. And he wrote that Kubrick has something to say about the causes and effects of depersonalized sex and praised the work as thought-provoking and unsettling. For reviewers that didn't like the movie so much, the New York Post thought the pacing was too slow. Even though they said that was intended to convey a dream state, critics objected that it made actions and decisions seem labored. Another complaint was that it did not live up to the expectation of it being a sexy film, which is what it had been marketed as, thus defying audience expectations. One reviewer from Entertainment Weekly complained about the inauthenticity of New York City, of the New York setting, because they filmed it in London. They actually filmed it at Pinewood Studios, where they filmed Batman 1989.
Oh, cool, nice, and some Bond films.
Yeah, I actually think it looked very New Yorkish. Until I realized that it was filmed, I was like, oh, okay, well,
unless you maybe even like Kubrick lived in New York for like decades and like very went to painstaking lengths to replicate. How would you know that it?
Yeah, how would you even know? Yeah, and apparently he didn't want to, like, because he was in London and he apparently has a fear of flying and didn't want to fly to New York to film. So I mean, you do what you got to do to work with him.
Yeah.
And the New York Observer criticized the film's feeble attempts at melodramatic tension and suspense. Another reviewer dismissed it as estranged from any period I recognize. Who are these people played by Cruise and Kidman who act as if no one has ever made it past them and are so deeply traumatized by their newfound knowledge of sexual fantasies? The kind that mainstream culture absorbed at least half a century ago. Who are these aristocrats whose limos take them to secret mass orgies in Long Island mansions? Even dream plays need more grounding in the real world.
Okay.
Don't agree with that. But it has been re-reviewed and reevaluated, and many consider it to be one of his best movies. Martin Scorsese wrote in the book Kubrick, the definitive edition, when Eyes Wide Shut came out a few months after Stanley Kubrick's death in 1999, it was severely misunderstood, which came as no surprise. If you go back and look at the contemporary reactions to any Kubrick picture, except his earlier ones, you'll see that all his films were initially misunderstood. Then after 5 or 10 years came the realization that 2001 or Barry Lyndon or The Shining was like nothing else before or since. The same can be said about Eyes Wide Shut.
Nice. Yes, I knew Scorsese himself was a big fan, not of just Kubrick, but of this movie too. I watched like a 2-minute excerpt of him talking about this movie.
Oh, and damn, in 2022, IndieWire named the film the best movie of the 1990s. Not one of the best, the best.
Wow.
Of the 1990s. Yeah, Slant Magazine's ranked its second greatest film of the 1990s. The British Film Institute ranked the film at 19 on its list of 90 great films of the 1990s.
You know what's funny is it doesn't feel like a 90s movie at all to me.
No, yeah, that was another thing that it felt very other than like
timeless.
Other than like, the not using, cell phones and all that. Like all the stuff that would make it like very like it felt very much like it didn't really date itself at all, which I thought was really
exactly.
Yeah. If I had like recently watched more of his movies, I would have totally ranked this in his filmography.
I'm not ready
But-
to do that yet. Definitely not.
I can't do that, but we do have to give it a score, which I imagine is going to be very hard.
Well, I've been
both
thinking
of them.
about this actually, and I think I'm going to do something that I've never done. I don't even know if you'll accept this.
Oh no, it's your show.
I think I want to abstain. Like I don't want to give it. I'm not ready to give it a rating yet. I have not. I enjoyed it. I can say that much. But like, I want that next watch to really solidify how I felt about it. See if I like it more or less. I just don't feel comfortable giving it a rating right now.
Your Letterboxd is just going to say that you watched it.
Yeah, I think so. None of my movies. Yeah, like just waiting on rewatch to see what I feel.
I'll stand in solidarity with you because I don't know what I want to give it yet. By the way, this is not saying that I didn't like it. I just don't know. This is between me wanting it to give like a good score or a great score.
For sure.
And it definitely it's stayed with me. I watched it earlier today, and when it was over, I was kind of try to let it wash all over me a bit, and like I thought maybe I could pick it apart quickly before we got on here, but even reading about it, that wasn't enough time to really fully digest it. And I hope everyone listening is okay with that, because like we did talk about what we enjoyed, and there was a lot to really like about it, and I would love to come back to this, not maybe necessarily talk about the whole movie, but if we watch if we watch a few more of his movies like recently, and kind of come back and look at it, and I would definitely watch it again sooner than later.
Certainly, I think like I need to fully get it. Like, but I agree. Like, just not completely ready yet. Loved everything to do about Kubrick's filmmaking, and there's, like you said, there's lots to love in it. But this, more than probably any movie I can remember that we've covered, I feel like there is still so much more we could really get into. If we wanted to chat about this movie for 3 hours, we probably could. Like,
I think we could.
It's pretty dense. It's 240 runtime or close to that. And there's lots of other scenes that we didn't even touch on. You know what I mean? So it would make for a good two-parter of an episode someday, but
I think so. I will say, for it being his last movie, I think it's not a bad note to end on at all. I mean, it's a solid piece of, like, even technical filmmaking. It just looks great.
Yeah, exactly.
The score is great. He really put his actors to the paces, and you can tell they both put in. Like, I think she's a little better than him in it, but they're both very good in it. And even some of the smaller roles seem like they have like a little bit more attention to them too. Like,
Sidney Pollack in general, I thought
that was
I really liked his
really
performance. Good. Yeah.
Vanessa Shaw, who I was like, where do I remember her from? And I guess she was in Hocus Pocus back in the day. But then I was like, that wasn't it. She's in the Hills Have Eyes remake. She has a grisly end in that movie. But
Todd Field too. How could we not mention him? He directed Tar a couple years ago. I didn't even know that he acted before.
Somebody ran. Alan Cumming is like the hotel.
Where do I recognize him from?
He was Nightcrawler in X2. But there's other stuff that he's been in.
That's who that was.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So it's like there are a lot of random people that popped up in this that put in solid work for a really good director, and I think that's what they were really excited about doing. So that's awesome. I mean, they got to work with Stanley. I mean, I don't know if I could personally work on a movie for 400 days. And they said 46 of those weeks was like uninterrupted.
Yes.
Where there was like no break.
Is that where the record came from? Like the continuous shoot?
Yeah, it's a continuous shoot.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't. I mean, can you imagine just being a day player? Like, I only got one scene. And like, dude, why are you still in London? Well, we're still shooting this movie. I don't think they won't let me go yet.
And to think, this movie has virtually no stunts that I can remember seeing.
No, this is
special
all
effects shots.
This is just acting.
Yeah,
this is all.
I kind of miss like movies like this, honestly. Like you know what?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer movies like this. If I'm being honest, I mean,
100%. This movie could have been acted on a stage and have done the exact same thing.
Yep, I agree. So yeah, this is the first of us. We're gonna abstain from giving it a score. I'm doing mostly.
Thank
I
you
don't really.
for.
I don't know what I want
Yeah.
to give it. I don't know what I want to give it, and also I will stand in solidarity with my friend here and not give a score as well. But I will not object to revisiting it and telling you like what I
Maybe
would
in the
give it after
future,
another
like
watch.
in a few months, maybe we'll try and plan on rewatching it and then like recap it and kind of
Yeah,
give it a
we,
score in
we
like a
kind of do
short
like the
episode
top
or
of the
something.
top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be one of our short form stuff or something that we can like put down because I really didn't know what to give it. I know I liked it.
Yeah, I
I
know that
liked
much.
every
But
moment
there's
of
so
it.
much to chew on that like if I had watched The Shining for the first time, I would probably feel the same way.
Exactly.
Like it's just, Kubrick demands rewatches like no other. And
Yeah.
there's so many different ways you can interpret his films that I'm not content yet. So
Yeah.
hopefully you
Well,
guys are all right with that. Thank you, Gaius, for indulging me in my abstention here.
Well, if anything, too, also thank you for picking a really good movie. I mean, like I said, I hadn't watched it in when I meant years, I meant years, and it was a nice little revisit, and I want to revisit it again soon. And I'm glad that we did it. So yeah,
Totally, me too.
Yeah. And to not end on, we have to add a little box office into the end of this episode because we're not doing a news episode this week. We're actually recording 2 episodes today for our 1999 anniversary as we're doing Eyes Wide Shut today and Blair Witch in just a bit. But we have to do a little box office because we have there, arguably, at least box office wise, what is supposed to be the biggest movie of the year is opening this weekend, Deadpool and Wolverine. But before that, Twisters overperformed big time. I only won this week because I went on the high end, but it went even higher than the high end. I said $65 million, but you guys came out in full force and saw it $81.3 million opening weekend.
Congrats.
They said what drove this was 4DX showings were really high for the movie, and I would not want to see this in 4DX. I know there's like a audience for that to have your seats and shit shake. I don't need to have that happen.
Yeah,
I don't need to have that happen. But apparently, a lot of people saw this in 4D.
This would be the movie to have that. Yeah,
and also, Middle America showed up a lot. I mean, it was apparently Oklahoma City was like one of the biggest turnouts for the movie. Now it's crazy because these areas where it did really well are typically ravaged by real tornadoes. So I don't know why they would want to see a movie about tornadoes, but they really did. I know they actually did film in Oklahoma as well. And also I think what helped this movie too, the marketing from day one, they sold this as an old-fashioned, big, fun summer blockbuster movie, and they never swayed from that. They weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. They weren't trying to make something like incredibly groundbreaking. The director said he didn't even want to talk about. They kept asking, "Why did you bring up climate change when you're making a movie about like the weather?" And he was like, "I don't want it's supposed to be a fun movie." And I think that was the best thing to do. And I think we can. I mean, I know that part of the turnout was CGI tornadoes, but some of this has to be Glenn Powell too, right? I mean, I think he is. He might be like our new box office movie star
for sure. He's having a hell of a year.
So kudos to them. Kudos to the last few weeks of all these movies overperforming after the very like not great start from the beginning of the year when we were like all doom and gloom.
We're now.
Our beginning of the summer. And also too, Longlegs held up really well in its second weekend. Only dropped 46.6% to $11.9 million. It's made $44.9 million domestically on a budget that was less than $10 million. Horror movies typically fall 50% or more in their second weekend. And this is even with what some thought was misleading marketing. What was the C+ cinema score or C- somewhere in there? People were so interested in seeing it and it didn't collapse. So I think that's a sign of it. People are responding to it, whether it's positive or negative. People want to check it out.
Yeah, so I took my girlfriend to go see it on Friday last week. So I don't think she didn't like it. She definitely didn't have the appreciation for it that I did. She, though, like me, laughed hysterically at some of Nick Cage's moments in that movie. Like, where he's like, although I think she laughed because like she thought he was trying so hard to be creepy that she thought it was funny. Where I was like, I just love Nick Cage and I know what he's going over the top and it's hilarious. Yeah. She didn't have a bad time, but I definitely appreciate it a little bit more. But I'm glad because there were some good moments that we chatted about afterwards. But in any case, it was great to see it in theaters again. That'll probably be the end of that theatrical run for me. But I'm looking forward to like as soon as this gets that physical release,
I can't wait
scooping
to
up
own
that
it.
4K if they
And-
release it that way.
And please, Neon, put a bunch of bonus features on it because I would love to
Oh,
learn
that
more
would be
about
the
the
best
making
part.
of
If
it.
we get some deleted scenes of the character long legs, like that's all I could ask for at this point.
Yeah. And now as far as Deadpool and Wolverine,
Oh God.
So it turns out that I think I'll be seeing this at Comic-Con on Thursday because I'm going to the panel that Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are going to be at on
No
Thursday.
way.
The length of the panel is the exact length of the movie, so everyone's assuming they're gonna.
Okay.
Because if you're in attendance for the panel on, because it's on the Friday. I'm sorry. If you're in attendance on the panel, everyone's assuming like, hey, like you won't get a chance to see the movie because you're here. So why don't we just show you the movie? That's
Right.
happened before in a lot of panels. So hopefully that'll be the case.
Dude, that's awesome.
The box office tracking on this movie is all over the place.
Really? Okay. I only am imagining it's quite high.
It's very high. No, it starts high and just gets higher. So the low end is $165 million opening weekend. The high end is
what?
That's the high end is and the high end is $200 million. They think it could actually make They think it could actually make $200 million this weekend because of all the hype and all the secrets. And apparently, there's Ryan Reynolds admitted today that they lied about some of the cameos that were going to be in it because they didn't want to give away the real ones. So they actually leaked fake cameos that were supposed to happen.
Oh wow!
Starting with the Taylor Swift one that's Dazzler. Now you could still be lying about that. She might be in it. I don't know. But there's apparently a lot of surprises. But what is going to be the case is that this will be the biggest R rating opening weekend ever, no matter where it lands on the low end or the high end.
Right.
$200 million is a lot, but there is a lot of hype and anticipation, and a lot of people are at the world premiere actually right now as we're recording this. So we will get a lot of social media reactions within the next hour or so. So if they're very positive, I can see the movie really doing the high end. But a part of me is reluctant to go that high, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did though. I mean, I don't know it. And I also think that Twisters and Deadpool and Wolverine can actually share the marketplace. Some people were saying they should have not opened Twisters a week before, maybe 2 weeks before, but I think there's room for both to continue to do well.
So would this be 2024's first $1 billion grossing movie if it reaches that? When it reaches that?
If it does, well, no, Inside Out 2 has already done it.
Oh, right. Okay, I forgot about that one.
There are people that think this can hit $2 billion though, which is crazy.
Yeah, that would be the first time since when the first Avatar.
I guess the last one did too.
Avatar 2 hit $2 billion.
Yeah.
Box office,
yeah, worldwide.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so I much like how I don't know what score to give Eyes Wide Shut. I don't really know where to predict.
Yeah, that is quite the gap.
It's a big gap, but what a gap to have.
We can compensate by doing a 10 million range.
Oh, I guess
if you want. Who's to say we can't, right? We make the rules over here.
Oh, yeah. So that's for sure. You want to go first?
If you want, I was gonna give you first since you'll be seeing it at San Diego Comic-Con. But so you said 165 low to 200. I'll go. I really have high expectations, I guess, for this. I wouldn't prior to you saying those numbers, I don't think I would have guessed this high. But now that you have, I mean, may as well send it all the way.
Yeah.
I like somewhere at 180 to 190.
Okay.
Damn, that is insane to say that out loud. That is quite the opening.
Maybe I should. All right, maybe I'll just throw the Hail Mary. All right, I will do. You said 180 to 190.
Yep.
All right, then I will do 190 to 200.
Wow. So is this a typical? Is this just a 3-day weekend? A Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
This is a normal 3-day weekend. This is
okay.
This is no holiday, just the end of July. Nothing going on.
I don't even think I'm going to bother seeing it opening weekend because I don't even know if I'll even get the chance, fighting for tickets at this point. But
you always talk about how you always talk about how their theaters they are a little smaller than what we're used to here. Before a movie like this, would it be packed at
for sure. Even my second screening of Long Legs was a full house, which was great. I was in a pretty small theater, but it was nice just to see that many people out to see it, which was great. And I imagine if anything, like the movies that bring people to the theaters over here are the MCU, like big IP movies. So
Yeah.
I'm expecting it's gonna be a crazy weekend at my local theater, but maybe we'll see. I might see it on Tuesday, but Twisters I really want to get into while that watch of the first movie is fresh. But you never know. Maybe we'll see how what the hype is like going into the weekend if I can make the time.
All right, you heard it here. We did a lot of firsts today. No scores for the anniversary episodes, and then the $10 million range for our box office.
That's
predictions.
right. Yeah, breaking
this
new
is just
ground.
a hard one to call, but if anything, summer's gotten better, and I'm looking forward to it being successful. I mean, if these movies are successful, it's good for the industry. So, more power to them.
Yeah.
If it can break records with a $200 million, I mean, either way it goes, it's going to be the biggest R rating opening weekend ever. So, there's that. I'm curious to see what reviews are going to be like. I mean, I'm looking like once the social media embargo lifts, and I know that's not like a total like picture of like how good the movie is because you got a lot of people who are just excited to see it. But I am curious to see how what the reaction is going to be. And I know this movie has been the embargo is pretty stiff review wise too. It's very secret about what you can say. So
right.
And yeah, for those thinking it's opening weekend too, I mean, everyone's not going to have a chance to see it opening weekend. So try not to share publicly on social media every secret that's in the movie because, you know, everyone can't rush out to see a movie on opening weekend. There's always a big debate on how long you wait. We had this big debate on the website about whether or not to show Nicolas Cage fully as long legs in some of the pieces that they wrote about the movie. Since the marketing tried to keep that as such a secret, and it only been out like a week, and there was a big discussion, and they decided that they would hold off on showing pictures of him in any stories. So I thought that was good. At least give it a couple weeks. If you don't see it by week 3, that's on you. I guess.
I mean, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. But yeah, that wraps us up, right? For our 25th anniversary look back at 1999's Eyes Wide Shut. Jackson's pick, a very good pick. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
We are wrapped up episode 185. We're getting so close to 200, and we really got to discuss that. That's a whole another story. We are going to be jumping on to the Blair Witch Project here shortly, right after this. Another anniversary from 1999. And you can hear all these episodes wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods. But you should also find us on the Playlist Studio app because they are a podcast network, and they work very, very hard and take care of us and edit our show when we don't have the time to do it. So thank you so much for that. You can get it in the iOS store or your Google Play Store if you have a Samsung or Droid phone. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our YouTube page to actually watch us talk about movies and look for other short form content as well. I think that about sums it up. As always, it's a pleasure talking movies with you. Going to be talking another one, a very different one, in just a second here. With some special guests. So look forward to that, guys. And we will see you soon.
See you later, guys.